want to talk about Pep, right? Everyone lauds Pep, and I get it. Why wouldn't you, right? They've had a disastrous season. Look how much money they've spent now. But now we'll talk about next year if City go on a mad one and we'll go, oh, Pep, yeah, he's amazing. No other manager within this thing has got what he's got. Look what they bought in January. Some of them probably won't even play next season. Absolute flops. And then he's gone again. And we'll still buy more. But everyone will go, see, that's Pep, man. He's a winner.
Yeah, but Joe, that's what you have to do. No, if you want to win a league, you've got to utilize every window.
Which other clubs are doing that? Which other clubs are doing that?
Chelsea.
Everyone's doing that.
Who? I mean, we only signed Kane won the league. So
hang on. If you look how much Man City have spent, right? If you take out this window and the last window, in the last 5 years, Spurs have spent more money than Man City.
Well, but this
Chelsea
is my point.
Arsenal have.
My point, Saver, is he had the squad. He's had one bad season. Then they go, fuck this, we're not having this. There's fucking 500
Yeah, but Joe, that's the archetypal rebuild, right? This is the thing. Well, you can shake their head. This is a rebuild.
What I'm saying is, though, that 5 years where they haven't spent out, my point is Arsenal are now at that stage. They have got a core nucleus now with that.
Yeah, but the difference. The difference.
And we had to rebuild over many years. They literally two windows rebuilt.
But that's not true though.
January summer
Man City have been rebuilding from a few years ago. That's why
January summer rebuilt. Is it like
they've been rebuilding from a few years ago.
They've literally rebuilt their midfield and attack.
Yeah.
Two windows.
And as much as we think it's done,
that's not true. That's not true.
It's not. No, for one, that's not true, Sam. They've been rebuilding for about 2 years, actually.
Yeah,
yes, they still perform. They've been better than the rest, but they've not been near the levels they were at 4 years ago. They've been actually regressing for a while. But they've just not made
2 years ago. 2 years ago, who did they sign to signify this rebuild?
Yeah, exactly.
I'll go through it. I'll go through it then, Hooks. This is the problem.
Wait, but just quickly, sorry, before you go, Sava, before you go, I just want everyone to understand: signing players in the transfer window is not rebuilding. Like there has to be a core idea behind why you're buying. Like rebuild is intentional. It's not like, oh yeah, we're signing players in the transfer window. That means we're rebuilding, because every team doesn't rebuild every transfer window. Like
you got a point there, Hooks, because they let their age profile get too old.
Like Man City have openly these last two windows have shown us that they're openly admitting that they held that they've.
Yeah, but you're saying the rebuild is done.
They effed up last summer by not choosing to rebuild them.
Let me
didn't want to rebuild them. So
again, a rebuild isn't done in 2 windows. A rebuild isn't done in 2 windows. You can.
For City, it is, bro.
Hang on. Can I just get one sentence in? Like,
go on, yeah.
Right, but when you look at the team that's going to be playing next year, Vardiol is going to be a massive part of that. He wasn't bought in the last 2 windows. Diaz is going to be a massive part of that. Wasn't bought in the last 2 windows, right? Rodri wasn't in the last 2 windows. Doku wasn't in the last 2 windows. Bob has come through the youth team. Hang on. Haaland wasn't bought in the last 2 windows. So what they're actually doing, when we're saying a rebuild, what they're doing is all of the players, you can look confused all you want. This is really basic. What they're doing is all of the older players that are moving on are being replaced. So when you look at now, Bernardo Silva coming to... Hang on. Hooks, let me talk, man. Right? Yep, but Hooks, they're not... Go on, Sam. They're not replacing their entire 11 in one window. They're building around the squad players that are leaving, right? They've brought in Marmoush, who will be replacing players that have gone. De Bruyne's gone. They're bringing in Cherki. But they've still got Foden, who's been there. They've still got Doku, who's been there for years. Haaland, who's been there for years. Right? Rodri's still there. Gundogan's still there. Right? Diaz is still there. So what they're doing is all the players that have gone out, they're just filling them in. They're just filling them in, aren't they? With Cherki is replacing De Bruyne, essentially. Right? If you look at left back, right, Vardiol is going to shift into centre half, which is what Pep said last year. Vardiol is going to shift into centre half next season. So Ain't Nouri's going into the left back position they've had problems with for a few years. I don't see anything wrong with what they're doing. They're doing what big clubs should do. You have some holes in your team, you plug them. The difference is Arsenal haven't done it. Yeah. Liverpool until this year have not done it. Yeah. City are doing it, and everyone's got a problem with them doing it. I don't see the issue.
They spent like nearly 180, 190 million in January.
Sure.
Can any clubs, obviously we can't, right? But can you write off a signing of Nico Gonzalez? Can you write off a cousin of signing?
Who said they've written him off?
Well, we'll see how much they clear next season, won't we?
No. Okay, yeah, but Joe, but again, this is what I mean, right? This is where fans get emotional, right? Who's written him off? You as a fan can say he's written off. Pep Guardiola, how many times over the years, you all know this, when Pep brings players in, unless they are the best ones, like Haaland and De Bruyne, how many times you see Pep Guardiola slowly but surely introduce a player into that team for the first year? Right?
Savile, bro. I don't think a rebuild constitutes having to rebuild a starting 11 or 11 players. No. I think, for example, Liverpool, after we lost Henderson, Fabinho, etc., we had to have a rebuild. We had to rebuild the midfield. But Virgil van Dijk, Robertson, Konate, Alisson, Salah, they all still played. So when we say rebuild, we're not saying you strip and rip everything out and literally buy another fresh set of players. But City are having a rebuild. The fact they're buying a left back, another forward, 2 centre-backs in January.
Midfielders.
Turkey, midfielders. That's a rebuild, bro. Because
3 midfielders,
because they're having to get rid of players to then build new players into the squad.
Sure,
in the same way,
that's what I said.
If my conservatory
the same thing.
No, but if my conservatory falls down, I've still got the house, but I've got to rebuild this conservatory, right? It's the same thing City are doing. So they've lost or they're losing players. Therefore, they're having to rebuild. I think, Joe, correct me if I'm wrong here. From what Joe's saying is, apart from City in the Premier League, no other team has the ability to rebuild in 2 windows, whereas City have. City have got that.
They just choose not to.
No, Saba, we don't because we try and play by the rules, where City don't. I think that's pretty obvious. And City fans
Chelsea.
Out on that
Okay. So how much money do Chelsea spend? Do Man United spend? Do Arsenal spend?
But that's not a rebuild. That's a future proof of Chelsea.
Forget the word rebuild. The word rebuild is taking over everything here.
No, right? But Saba, the other clubs don't have 100 and however many charges hanging over their heads. The other clubs don't materialize. But that is the primal reason why they're able to do the rebuild. Saba, if I lent you 100 million pounds,
but again, I didn't talk about.
Let me land one sec.
I don't know where you're going with this.
Saba, let me land one sec. If I lend you 100 million pounds and say go and do what you want with it, you haven't made that money, have you? I've given you that money. If I say to you, Saba, no, wait, Saba.
I don't know where we're going with this. You're looking at the wrong person.
No, I'm saying when we're saying that no other club can do a legitimate rebuild like Man City in this short period of time, we're saying because the other clubs are sticking to rule books. Newcastle, the richest club in the league, bro. Newcastle ain't spend money like Man City. Liverpool,
Has City been charged?
Come on, Saba, bro. Like,
no, Callum. Okay, no, let me come back at you now, right? You want to sit there? Was OJ? No. Callum, you want to sit there and give me all these hypotheticals?
It's not hypotheticals, bro. Hang on.
You want to sit there and give me all these hypotheticals? If my conservatory falls down, if I lend you money,
it's not hypotheticals. They're facts. All right, Saba. Sorry, before you land, Saba, really quick. One question, Saba, before you land. Really quick. Are Man City a bigger club than Man United, Liverpool, Arsenal, Chelsea, Real Madrid, Bayern Munich, Barcelona? Are they a bigger club?
No.
So why have they got the biggest sponsorship deals?
But I've not mentioned that, right? You're sitting here and
you're missing.
Sure, you are, but you're going at me with that. I never said any of this. I don't care about that shit.
I'm trying to prove my point, right? But you're not hearing my point, bro.
Callum, I'm hearing your point, but you gave me a lot of hypotheticals, so I'm going to sit there and say to you,
hearing my original point, bro.
I'm going to sit there and say to you, have Man City been charged with a 115?
Yes, they have been charged.
Yeah, they've been charged.
They've been charged, yeah? And they're still allowed to spend money, yeah?
Well, yes.
Okay, so if they're allowed to spend money, What's everyone's problem? Because when Man City aren't spending money in transfer windows, no one's saying anything. Everyone last year was going, oh, Man City have had a shit transfer and not done anything. So then when they bulk that money into 2 transfer windows, everyone's then going, oh, who else can do that? Look how much money Man United has.
That's the point. That's the point. That's the point. That's the point. That's what we're talking about.
That's talk, come on.
No, because we're not doing this. Yeah, we're not doing this because you started talking about they've been rebuilding from 2 years ago. No, they haven't. They spent.
If you actually listen to what I said, Hooks.
Okay,
if you actually listen to what I said, a rebuild isn't just when you sign 7 or 8 players, right? When we're talking about,
I know this. I said it's intentional, which is why I said signing Haaland doesn't signify a rebuild. Signing Doku doesn't signify a rebuild. So what are we doing?
But what does that? So then, what does the word? So what does the word So basically, the word rebuild can mean whatever any particular fan wants it to mean. The way I see it,
they signed Nico Gonzalez. But they signed Nico Gonzalez for 60 million in January, and have now just bought Reinders, Turkey, still have Gundogan, still have all these players. It's because they had a poor season. It's because he had a poor season. He's gone, fuck this money. Bunch. No one else can do that. Otherwise, you do it.
But they can. Chelsea kind of do it every year. Chelsea spend a shed load of money every year. Man United, hang on. You said no one else can do it. Man United, let me prove you're wrong then, Joe. Because if we're going to talk facts, have the facts in front of you. Man United last year spent 240 million. Someone in the chat will tell me I'm wrong. 230, 240. Man United this year have already spent 60. They're bidding another 65. They're already bidding another 65 for Mbeumo. They're bidding £100 million for Ekitike. So Man United are about to have 2 summer transfer windows in a row where they smash £200 million.
And who do Man United have to sell, Sava?
Exactly.
Hang on, right? But Man City sell. Callum, Man City sell a lot. They sell loads. So what's the problem? So if when Man City do it, everyone's got a massive problem. Chelsea do the same thing every year. Sell loads, buy loads. United, sell loads, buy loads. Right? When City do it, everyone's got a problem with it.
No one's got a problem with it. The problem is with the charges still withstanding and it's being dragged out. That's the problem with it. If City want to go and spend the money, cool. But let's find out if they're doing it legally.
Okay, but then that's
definitely not coming from you, Wolfie. That's definitely
the powers that be need to then say that they can't spend. Right? If the powers that be are letting them spend, we can all sit here and be annoyed about it, but they're letting it happen. If the powers that be say it happen, then it's not wrong, is it?
So because they've not been charged, we just shut up and let it go, yeah?
No one said that. But you guys, you just said to me they have been charged. You said they have been.
I'm asking you the question because I don't get what the outcome from this debate is that you want, bro. Because
I didn't want any outcome from the debate. You started bringing in charges and shit. I'm just responding to it. I was talking about Man City for years, for me, have needed to bring in younger players to replace the older players. They messed up last season. But now you are going to see players that have been bought for previous seasons now take a much bigger role. As I said, Vardiol was bought a few years back. He's going to shift into centre half.
So if they're replacing all these older players with younger players, is that not a rebuild?
I didn't say it wasn't a rebuild, but a rebuild. All I said was it doesn't happen in 2 windows. They're not changing a 25-man squad in 2 transfer windows.
But that's not a rebuild, bro. That's an overhaul. No one ever does that. It's impossible to do.
Well, Forest
my meaning of the word rebuild versus your meaning.
That was an overhaul.
So that's what this is. Right? It's your meaning of the word rebuild versus my meaning of the word rebuild. That's what this is.
I think what we're doing here is
staying up.
We're just going around in circles. That's what we're doing, Dan.
I just don't get it. They're not the biggest spenders, and everyone
was trying to work out. I was trying to work out where we were going with this. We are going to and
fro. This is Joe's fault. He started it.
Yeah, Joe. Now look, I think what you're saying. Look, Manchester City. This is where what I will say to end this before we close, right, is because I've always had this comparison with Pep and Sir Alex Ferguson. And when Sir Alex Ferguson's tools were blunt, as much as I hated going to war with him, he used to get Man United across the line and drag them across the line. Pep just says, give me more money. And as much as I do believe if you had the best squad, and I said this 11 is the best 11 in the world, who I'd want to manage it, it would be Pep Guardiola. If I said I want this manager to get the best and the last drop out of this team, I ain't giving it to Pep. I'm giving it to Sir Alex Ferguson. Those are the two differences for me. When your tools were blunt, Sir Alex Ferguson will drag you across the line. Because people all try to compare it and say, oh, yeah, but, the tools were blunt. Yeah, the tools were blunt in 2013 and Manchester United won the league. Yes, they had Robin van Persie and Rooney, but don't Man City still have Haaland and Foden? So I look at Phil Jones and Chris Smalling at the back and Darren Fletcher and aging Carrick, Scholes and Giggs getting across the line, and Manchester City having an aging Kevin De Bruyne, Bernardo and Gundogan, and it being absolute chalk and cheese. And let me be real, that was probably a more competitive Premier League back then when Sir Alex Ferguson had Wengers and Mourinho's than all these guys that he was going with. So for me, I think Sir Alex Ferguson just leaves everyone dead in the water when it comes to Premier League management.
Man, isn't it about spending the money better though? This is for me in the last 5-10 years, the one thing that Man City do better than all the other clubs is they spend their money better.
That's true. No arguments.
Yeah, this is the difference. If you actually look over this is the thing. If you actually look over what all of these clubs have spent over the last decade, I'm going to chuck Spurs in there, right? Spurs, Chelsea, Liverpool, Man United, Arsenal, all the big six, you know what I mean, right?
I would argue that I'd arguably say we've spent just as well as Man City. We just haven't had as much to spend.
No, I understand that. My point is that Man City do more often than not spend it very, very well. Like if you actually look at what they spent this summer, £110 million on 8 Nuri, Cherki and Reinders, and you've got people going Sesko and Ekatike are £100 million. That's bloody good in the transfer market.
Legends, Wolfie, legend.
That's really good of them in the transfer market. So I know we can hate them, but again, what Pep hasn't done, none of the free players he's gone and bought are top world class at the top of their game.